Let me ask you something. Have you ever been won over? You ever met someone who is so not your type, but their charm and their wit and their demeanor are such that you find yourself spending time with them anyway, just because you notice that you're happier in their company? Well, it's happened a couple of times for me, but the first and the most intense by far is They Might Be Giants. I think like most folks, I first became aware of They Might Be Giants because of the song Istanbul, not Constantinople. Only a tangential awareness. A quirky little oddity that would show up on TV every once in a while. Just enough to make me lift my head up from trying to learn every note of, say, Mike Stern's Upside Downside album for a moment and think, well, that's cute. You need to know where my head was in the mid-90s after I moved to Atlanta. I wasn't playing out at all. I had no band. I had no gig. I spent all of my music time learning from recordings. And the recordings were intense, right? John Scofield's Loud Jazz, Flat Out, A Go-Go, Stanley Clark's School Days, Alan Holdsworth's Velvet Darkness and Metal Fatigue, King Crimson's Red, Al Di Meolo's Splendido Hotel. Plus, at the time, I was discovering folks like Charlie Hunter, Sean Lane, hell, even Christoph Penderecki. That's what I was digging in the mid-90s. And somehow, in the middle of all of this deep, heady, bombastic, technical music, somehow, as I was surrounding myself with arpeggios and tremolos and virtuosos, and perhaps because I had already heard Istanbul, I guess I must have paid attention when I heard the name They Might Be Giants, because I distinctly remember the first time I heard Birdhouse in Your Soul on VH1. It spoke to me almost immediately. When I finally sat down to listen to the entire Flood album, each song surprised me, one after the other. It's almost as if they composed and performed the music for each song based only on a focus of maximally conveying a theme or a story, without any thought to sticking to the rules of a particular style or feeling the need to show off at all. Weird. But the topper for me was all the songs were about all of these intelligent, nerdy things. Songs about science, language, history. And the songs that were interpersonal or relational were still intelligent, not just simple love and heartbreak things. And this primed me. Since I discovered They Might Be Giants, every time I hear about another nerdy band, I keep hoping for another Flood. It hasn't happened yet, but okay, I must admit to having high hopes for Weezer. I don't know much about them, but the handful of songs I have heard, let's see, Buddy Holly, the Sweater Song, Hash Pipe, I think that might be it. So far, all of it feels a bit like what might happen if They Might Be Giants were forced to limit their influences to Black Sabbath and the Beach Boys. Oh, and then there's the whole Africa thing. The teenage girl who created the Twitter handle, and as a result, the entire internet got together and decided that Weezer needed to record Africa. And they did it well. Yeah, that earned them a lot of points in my eyes. I love that story, and I even love that Toto covered Hash Pipe as a result, too. It's just a great story all around. By the way, am I the only one that hears Lita Ford's Kiss Me Deadly when Hash Pipe comes on? Went to a party last Saturday night. Didn't get laid, I got in a fight. Well, that was fun. Something else I've noticed. I'm something of a fan of stand-up comedy, especially since so many comics make themselves so available through podcasts and social media. I've noticed that a lot of the comedians that I admire have come out pretty squarely as fans of Weezer. That's a plus for me too. Not gonna lie, I'm looking forward to this one. All right, let's get the Blue Album going. very first impressions. This is music to be played loud. Wow, it's been a while since I've said that about anything. It's true, though. The energy's pretty great. The guitars sound great. The dynamics work. None of it's likely to impress the jazz or prog snobs in your life, but for me, it's fun. So far. Plus, musically, I find myself making all of these wild connections I never would have expected. For example, take a look at what's happening in Undone, the Sweater song. Sure, you can make the argument that it's just a 1-4-5 in G flat. But check out these bent arpeggios that they use in the intro and again at the ending vamp. Now I'm going to share with you something I noticed. Let's take another simple chord change. Instead of a 1-4-5 in G flat, we'll do a 1-7 to 2-7 in A flat. Check this out. Here's where it gets fun. What if we take those same two chords at that same time signature, but let's use the same trick Weezer uses. We'll arpeggiate the chords, and we'll throw in some open strings whose notes are a half step off of the notes in the chord to create some tension. Do that, and here's what we get. That's right, everyone. Weezer used the same trick as the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And for bonus points, They Might Be Giants has a song on Flood called Sapphire Bullets of Pure Love. It all ties together. Aliens. A couple other things standing out. If you had told me that the album opens with quiet acoustic guitar, I don't know that I would have believed you. Also, if you had told me that the album ends with a 7-minute song that includes an extended guitar solo, I don't know that I would have believed that either. And in between, it all kind of rocks. There are moments of the nerdiness I was expecting, but there's also moments where they kind of sound to me a lot like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I mean, I'm not feeling this as an everyday album, and I'm not feeling this as something that is likely to live in my list of all-time favorites, but there is a lot to like here. I hope learning this album better doesn't mess things up for me, because as I'm just now starting to notice, in Buddy Holly, they're trying to rhyme front with violent, and that's making me unreasonably angry. All right, well, let's see what we get. I just finished reading Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline, the sequel to Ready Player 1. One of the things I like most about Ready Player 1 was that it seemed to me to be at its heart a parable about the dangers of nostalgia. To me, the biggest tragedy of these books was not the idea of virtual debtors' prisons or a vision of a technocratic monoculture. No, the biggest tragedy to me was that it showed an entire generation robbed of its own voice and creativity. A generation motivated monetarily to become experts in their grandparents' music, games, and movies at the expense of making their own. It depicted a world in which nothing was created and all culture was backwards looking. And thematically, this is what I'm hearing in a good portion of this album as well, especially in the garage. The meta-narrative for a portion of this album is nostalgia and alienation. And I have to say, the lyrics to No One Else and The World Has Turned and Left Me Here don't do them any favors either. In fact, you know what it reminds me of? I mean, the controlling jealousy I'm hearing in No One Else reminds me a bit of Run for Your Life from Rubber Soul, but that next song, The World Has Turned and Left Me Here, reminds me a lot of the creepy nice guy vibe I got from Pet Sounds. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that makes a ton of sense in the bigger picture. I mean, the vocal style, the songwriting, the way the parts are composed, there's an awful lot of Beach Boys on this album. Which, of course, leads me to Surf Wax America. This song might be brilliant, like legitimately genius. The first about 2 minutes of this song are a surf punk telling off a business boy about how, while everyone else is killing themselves with meaningless work, they'll be out on the ocean enjoying life, surfing. But then there's an undertow that pulls them too far out to get back home. And if you go by the lyrics alone, the conclusion you're going to come to is that the surfer dies. I mean, it does have all the trappings of a Greek drama, the arc of hubris and downfall. But starting at the 1 minute 46 second mark, the music tells a different story. After the frenetics and the high energy of the first half of the song abruptly stop, you get the chords played quietly with no other sound, the stillness of the ocean. The chords start to repeat, and you hear the chorus come in. You take your car to work, I'll take my board. And when you're out of fuel, I'm still afloat. And this is then juxtaposed with the last line of the verse, all along the undertow strengthening below. I never thought it would come to this. Now I can never go home. And then the music swells. Get it? Swells. There's an abrupt dynamics shift, and it goes back to the high energy chorus. The lyrics this time are just the lyrics of the chorus without the counterpoint of the undertow message. The message I'm getting here is that the surfer caught himself a swell, a wave. He's riding it in. Emily, you remember that long email I sent you about the Radiohead song Nude? It's like that. I gotta tell you, the last thing I expected going into this album is that a week later, my head would somehow be okay with both Mahavishnu and the Beach Boys living in the same space. Didn't see that coming. I guess there might be some hope for me learning something after all. Right, Astrid?